Hello, welcome. I'm Alex Villasante, the online program manager of the Highlights Foundation, joining you from Northeastern Pennsylvania on the traditional and contemporary lands of the Lenape Nation. Welcome to our March HF Gather with Claribel Ortega. Yay! Tonight we'll be talking about virtual visits, what they do, who they reach, and how they've changed or not over this challenging year. But before we get to that, a few reminders. We are recording tonight's session. All registrants will be sent a link from Zoom with this recording. It will also be available on the Highlights Foundation YouTube page, where you can see all of our previous gathers. All of them are wonderful, free content. They motivate, they inspire, and they challenge the creator in you. So please do check them out. This is a webinar style session, so you will not be able to unmute yourself and speak. I wish. But if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box. And at the end of Claribel's presentation, we'll get to as many of them as we can. You can also leave comments in the chat, which you're already doing. In these spaces and in all our spaces, the Highlights Foundation mission is to positively impact children by amplifying the voices of storytellers who inform, educate, and inspire children to become our best selves. Our courses embrace the core values of excellence, creativity, diversity, and integrity. And our goal is to show these values in all that we do. This means joining in our sessions with no hate, no harm, and no harassment of any kind. This is a place to learn and listen to one another and to create and engage respectfully. And before we get to Claribel, I do want to just mention that our executive director, George Brown, is here with us, hanging out and just being his general awesome self. Hi, George. So I want to introduce Claribel. Claribel Ortega went from journalism student to a small town reporter to author and media maven. You like that? I think it's really apt. She co-hosts two podcasts, the hilarious and chaotic Celebrity Book Club and Write or Die, which she also created and I love, and has been featured on BuzzFeed, Bustle, and Good Morning America. Claribel's debut middle grade novel, Ghost Squad, is out now from Scholastic and is being made into a feature film. Her forthcoming books include Witchlings from Scholastic and the graphic novel Frizzy from First Second. Welcome, Claribel.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Gosh, like we could just chat on and on and on, but instead of doing that, which I think people would find boring, and we were just talking before we started about how much we miss each other and miss being in community together. So that is actually my first question for you. Where during this time where we are away from people, where have you been able to find community in the virtual space?
So I pretty much live online, and I have from before, we were sort of forced to do that. So I've always spent a lot of time like on Twitter and on spaces like that. Lately, though, I think there was sort of like there was a lot of that. There was a lot of like being online, being on Twitter, doing all of these things, and it became overwhelming. So I've actually found like smaller spaces to be more comforting for me lately, like Discord groups, Twitch, where people like stream video games and like being in those chat rooms and stuff. There's a lot of intersection between gamers and authors. I don't know if you realize that, but it's like a lot. So stuff like that has been really comforting. And of course, I've still been on spaces like Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, talking with people, and just sort of commiserating about what we've all been going through. I'm grateful for technology during this time because it has really been the only way that I can connect with my friends. And there's people who I usually saw really often who I haven't seen since February of last year. Yes.
Time
what
is
is time?
It's true. You mentioned a little bit about how, those places like Twitter and social media, but sometimes they can be overwhelming. So what are some of the other things that are challenging about moving to a virtual space, whether it's professionally or socially?
I do think that fatigue can set in, no matter what you're doing. Like before everything happened, my job was traveling to shows, right? And I would travel a lot. I was always on airplanes, and I was really tired. I was extremely tired. So it's like anything in excess, it can be detrimental. So, just doing like back to back meetings, being on Zoom a lot, looking at the camera all the time, and not being able to like hug your friends can be really difficult. I debuted during the pandemic, so like how hectic debut is. Like the couple months before debut for me, I feel like I did more events than I would have done had it been in person, both because I was overcompensating and because it was a lot easier for people to have me, because suddenly, you don't have to pay for travel, right? It's just easier to have authors come to your library to speak, because it's virtual. So I did so many things, and that became like really tiring. So we were talking about this before. I had to learn how to sort of set boundaries for myself in terms of how many visits I did, what kinds of events I did, because just being in front of the screen constantly, it's still work. It still is a lot of work, even if you're not in person. It's just a different kind of tired, a different kind of like of being drained. So just learning how to deal with like all those new age things.
Well, I mean, you've already just started talking about all the amazing like tips and tricks and like strategies and what's different and what's not different about visits in virtual spaces. So I'm going to turn it over completely to you and go backstage, virtual backstage. Please do drop your questions into the Q&A, and then at the end, hopefully we'll be able to get some of those. But I will see you later, and yeah, enjoy.
Bye. All right, so it's just me and you guys now. So I'm gonna share my screen, and we're gonna do this. All right, so I'm just gonna talk to you guys about how to do really cool virtual events. All right, so not your mother's virtual launch, making your launch accessible, fun, and unforgettable. Peter, I'm glad you think my title is funny. So give me one moment while I get my notes, because I don't remember everything off the top of my head, believe it or not. All right, here we go. And for anybody who wants sort of like the written out transcript of this, I'll share it on Twitter later. All right, so where to start? The number one thing to keep in mind when putting together a virtual event is that you want to treat it like you would an in-person event. People really feed off of your enthusiasm for anything that you do. So if you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this event, or it's not the same because I'm not in person, that's normal. But if you're sort of putting that energy out into the world, people are not going to want to come to your event. You have to be as excited as you can, so that you can draw people in. So that is the very first thing. So what do I mean by that? What do I mean by treating a virtual launch like an in-person event? So the key is to make things as immersive as possible, right? Like immersive events are cool, as you can see by the bunny with the sunglasses, okay? You wanna make the audience really feel like they're there. So the first thing you wanna think about is making the event immersive. The ultimate goal is to make your audience feel like they're part of the event and not like they're just watching something pre-recorded or inaccessible, but that they're there with you and you're all having a big, beautiful book party together. So how can you make that happen? That's the question. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of tips on how you can make your events immersive. The very first tip I'm going to give you, on aside from the enthusiasm, because that one's really important, is your invites and your graphics. So visuals are really key. People are scrolling quickly through the internet. Their attention span is like this. So if you use beautiful visuals, things that will catch people's attention, they'll be a lot more likely to stop and read the thing that you are trying to get them to read. So the moment that you know when your event will be taking place and who will be taking part of it with you, you're going to make an invite graphic and begin sharing it on social media. I love using Canva and Photoshop. If you're a beginner, Canva is great because it's just really, really easy to use to make. They have a lot of templates to make your graphics look beautiful. And as an example, this presentation was made on Canva, so you can see that I'm not kidding. I also use Photoshop, but that's a little bit more advanced and it is more expensive. So the invite should match your book or author aesthetic in some way. You can have 1 or 2 different options so they don't get repetitive. I definitely recommend having more than one option. And you should make invites in different dimensions. So what I mean by that, like Twitter, Instagram, and Instagram stories all have different dimensions that you can find online, and it will crop it perfectly so that everyone can see all of the information. So you want to make that graphic in those 3 dimensions for like a Twitter post, an Instagram post, and an Instagram story dimension. And then you can use an Instagram post dimension for your Facebook because it will work on there if you're posting on there as well. I have some examples. So here is the launch invite for Bedazzled by Ryan LaSala. On the right, you can see his book cover, and then on the left you see the actual invite. It used the same exact background, the graphics, the color. It stands out. It has the names of the authors who he's participating with, all of the important information, as well as the logo to Books of Wonder, who is the bookstore who he partnered with, and I'll have more on that later. This is the graphic for Ghost Squad, which is for my launch. I made the cover, the focus of this graphic, and then I included pictures of me and the other 2 authors that were joining me. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Just kidding. So every invite should have the time, date, platform, and an easily typed out link that people can just plug in. Although you should also include that link in the text of whatever post you're sharing. You should send your invite to friends and family, encourage people to share as much as possible, and continue to remind people on your own platform up until the day of the event, but not every single day. You need to announce at least a week before the event to give yourself time to promote it and to get it into people's brains. I know that one of the hardest parts of promotion is feeling like people don't care or that you're being repetitive, but I promise you, as long as you're not posting about it every single day, it's not too much and you'll be okay. And the amount of times that people miss things, even when you post about it, you would be so surprised. So you have to keep on talking about stuff to reach as many people as possible. My next tip is probably a little bit of an unconventional one. It's create a menu. So I was fully planning on having my book launch catered, and obviously I couldn't do that once we realized it was going to be a virtual launch. So what I did was the next best thing in my opinion, which is I created a menu of all the food that I would have had at my book launch. And it was all things that were featured in my book and things that were from my culture, because my book is like very much about Dominican mythology and culture and folklore. So I shared this on social media. I put it on the dedicated book launch page, which I'll share more about that later. And I also included recipes. If you do this, I would make sure to include easy options like I did with the string cheese and the drinks, and those are all things that you can find at the supermarket. You don't actually have to make them, as well as more complicated recipe reliant foods. This kind of thing makes your audience feel like they're part of the launch, right? If you're all having the same snacks, it kind of feels like it's a group. It's a group of you together as opposed to just someone watching a screen. Encourage them also, I would say, on social media to post pics if they do make stuff or buy snacks. It could encourage other people to be like, what is that? And it'll give it more of like a community feel. Okay, this one is one of my favorites. Find fun co-hosts. So you might be shy or worried about talking in front of an audience who you can't see, but what about your extrovert author friend who throws glitter in the air every time they walk in a room? Are they around the day of your book release? Um, Ask them if they'll be part of your launch. Even if you're not shy, ask them. Regardless of how you feel in front of the camera, try to find one or two people to join you at your event. It doesn't have to be a one-on-one chat. I love having events with 3 people because it feels a lot more like a party. Um, I just saw the chat about Ryan. Yes, that's very true. It does feel more like a party, and it's a lot less likely for there to be an awkward lull if there's a few of you on the panel, and you can play off of each other, and it's a lot more fun that way. Finding other authors or book publishing people is also a great way to reach multiple audiences at once. You can ask them to share your invite and event graphics with their own platforms for maximum reach. Just give me 1 second. Also, okay. Okay, so speaking of maximum reach, it's a really, really good idea to partner with a bookstore. So my launch was in conjunction with Books of Wonder in New York City, but you can pick your own local bookstore and do the same. You can offer signed copies or like swag of your book from your partnering bookstore, have a bookstore employee introduce you during the event, or even be in conversation with you, or moderate if that's an option that they offer. You'll have the added benefit of their platform. Like Books of Wonder put my event on their page. They sent it out in their newsletter, which is really great. They tweeted about it, posted about it on social media, on their Instagram. So you'll have the added benefit of their platform, and all while supporting a local business, which is really great because, you know, we need to support bookstores. Also make sure to include a bookstore logo in all your event related graphics so that people do know that the bookstore is involved, just like I showed you, me and Ryan did. Make your launch cute. Okay, now let's talk about the appearance of your event. And that includes you, the author, okay? So if you're launching a book and having an event at a bookstore, you'll likely think of what you're gonna wear ahead of time, right? You do your makeup if you wear it. You might even get some decorations or a big poster for the day of, or even balloons, right? You'll prepare ahead of time. You're excited, you wanna look nice, you want the store to look nice. You're going to do preparations ahead of time. So a virtual launch is no different. You should still make an effort to look nice and to make the visuals of your event appealing and fun. This doesn't mean you have to wear like a ball gown or a dress or a suit or anything like that. I don't want you to do anything that would make you feel uncomfortable or not like yourself, but you do want to go for a celebratory look. So whatever that means for you, something that makes you feel festive, whether that's a t-shirt and cool lipstick or a whimsical dress, whatever you feel comfortable and happy in works best. And for my launch, I asked the people who were like my co-panelists to also dress up. I was like, hey, we're like a fur thing or something. Like I gave them a little bit of guidelines. So if it's your close friends and they'd be okay with that, then maybe coordinate. That would be cute. So things like using a fun backdrop or even a giant poster of your book behind you are all fun, cute ways to make your event look and feel like an in-person event. More on how you can make the actual visuals of your event beautiful using technology a little later. Okay, this next one is my favorite. So it's think outside the box. So usually when you think of a book event, you think of an author, maybe one other person, and they're sitting there in conversation. But it can be more than that. There are no rules for book events aside from be there, talk about your book. But there are so many different ways to make your event dynamic, fun, and unique if you just apply a little bit of your imagination to it. So my first tip would be using an element from your book. So is your book about ghosts, or is it a middle grade contemporary, or a road trip gone wrong? You can utilize the themes around your book to make your launch specific to you. So if your book is about ghosts, you can, you and your co-panelists can tell a scary story about something you experienced in real life. If your book is a middle grade book, maybe you can share those awkward like tween pics that your mom has kept all these years, which the audience would absolutely love. For a road trip book, you can ask for audience stories of their worst or funniest road trip experiences and read them during the launch with their permission, of course. Think about what would make a fun event for you as a reader and try to build on that, but always make sure whatever you're doing doesn't run too long either, especially if you're doing like story-based things. Make sure you have like sort of a cap on how long things can be, because stories and games can run the risk of making the event run over, and you want to make sure that the things that you're picking are quick and to the point and fun so that the audience doesn't get bored or have to leave. Involving the audience is another great tip. You know, if you, let's say you just made some art together during your launch, make the audience vote on who's the nicest. Have your, make them guess a scene you're acting out if your book has some sort of drama or acting as an element. Audience participation really makes virtual events stand out, and it makes your readers want to attend more things that you're a part of as well. You can even do things like giveaways and trivia during your event. I did a giveaway and it was really, really popular. And lastly, don't be afraid to have fun. Don't be afraid to have fun. I'm sorry, I lost my place. So book launches should be about your book, but also you as an author. Don't be scared to showcase your personality and the things you love with your readers, but also make sure you are comfortable with whatever you're doing. That should be the number one thing. Comfort should always come first. I have a couple of examples for you. Okay, so for the Bedazzled launch, so Bedazzled is a book that's about cosplay and arts and crafts, and for that launch, we made art using watercolor and salt, and we were making it as we chatted about the book, and like the audience couldn't really see it, and then at the end we did a reveal of our artwork. So that was really fun. Ryan also bedazzled his face. And so for the launch of As Far As You'll Take Me, which is Phil Stamper's book, the book is about music is a big theme in this book. And so we each prepared a piece on a recorder, and our performances were like interspersed between us talking about book stuff, and then the audience had to guess what we were playing. That was really fun. And Phil's event invite was like all three of us did like cheesy portraits with the recorder, like we were in band, and it was super fun. And I played Baby Shark, and it went well. It went really well. Okay, so tools and platforms. So where should I host my launch and what equipment do I need? So this is really important because there's so many options. There's Zoom and YouTube and Instagram and a whole host of places where you can launch your book. So how do you pick? Take a little water. So my first piece of advice would be to pick the thing you feel most comfortable with, right? It's always good for you, again, to feel comfortable with what you're doing so you're not too worried and you're not too nervous. But also don't be afraid to try a new platform and learn how to work it ahead of time, as long as it's not going to make you panic, of course. I don't love Zoom for things like book launches because when it's a lot of people, when it's like hundreds of people, their security is sometimes not the best. I think it's better for stuff like this. And I find it harder to interact with the audience on Instagram because of their chat interface. But you have to also find what works for you. Let's say you have a huge platform on Instagram, then it makes sense for you to have a launch there. My platform of choice, if I were organizing a book launch for someone else, would be to use Streamyard/YouTube. So Streamyard is a really, really great program. It's there's a lot of customization options. You can customize, and I'll show you an example of it in a bit, but you can customize your background. You can have a ticker that goes across the bottom of the video. I used it, for example, to announce that people could get signed books at Books of Wonder. Or you can put your social media down there, whatever you'd like, and you can change it throughout the event and turn it off and on. It's really cool. Change the colors of it. You can also highlight audience questions and have them show up on the screen, which I think is a great feature because it makes the audience really feel like they're participating, and they love to see their just name and their little icon on the screen. It just makes it so much more fun for everybody who's involved. So for StreamYard, you can also do multiple, you can stream to multiple places at once. I believe that that's only a feature of the paid account, but you're streaming from one place, which is StreamYard, but then the feed is sent out to different places of your choosing. If you had to choose one though, I would definitely choose YouTube as my main one. If you're doing a bunch of them, I would just make sure that YouTube is at least one of them. And the interface for StreamYard is actually really easy. I encourage you to go on their website and just sort of like click around and see. It's so simple. It's very, very user-friendly. I would say it's much more user-friendly than any of the other platforms that I've used. And it's easy to sort of like explain to your co-panelists. You send them a link to the green room, they show up, they can test their camera. It's really straightforward. So the reason why I love YouTube so much, it has tons of benefits. You can schedule a live event beforehand, which means that you can share a link to where your event is going to be streaming beforehand, or you can even embed it onto a page on your website, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later. So people can save the link, they can bookmark it ahead of time, so it'll be easier for them to show up on the day of the event. And if you have a YouTube channel, that's a really great way for you to gain some more subscribers. So the other thing that I really love about YouTube is the interaction part of it. Just wanna, you can designate a moderator for your event on YouTube. So you basically, I had an author friend of mine be the moderator for the day, and he had a little icon next to his name, so everybody knew that he sort of had the power to kick anyone out if they were being inappropriate. And he also shared relevant links in the chat with people, and then he was able to highlight, we see on the screen here, this was my event, this is a screenshot of my event. The background, it's beautiful. And then Phil, who was the moderator, had highlighted Arvin's question and it came up on the screen. So it was really nice. It was very visually appealing. It feels like a party. My book covers in the background. And yeah, so that's why I really like YouTube. You can see the chat on the right-hand side. So that can be a little bit overwhelming if you're not used to doing that kind of thing. But if you want to keep track of the chat and see what people are saying, you can do that as well. And you can sort of feed off of the audience's energy, even though you're not face to face with them. Makes it just really fun and immersive. Okay, so for tools and platforms, aside from your platform, you also want to make sure the equipment you're using is all working great and contributing to a smooth and visually appealing event. So you want to make sure you test your video and your sound setup ahead of time, as well as your lighting. If your event is at night and you know your lighting won't be great, consider investing in a ring light. I have a ring light right now. I'm in a small apartment. It doesn't have a lot of light. And so ring lights really save me. I also usually use a backdrop for all of my events. So if you need something for your background, I would consider like a photo backdrop. Okay, so how do we bring this all together and make sure you actually have an audience on the day of your event? Aside from promoting your event ahead of time and making appealing graphics for your invite and finding co-hosts and a bookstore to help you spread the word, consider having a dedicated book event page on your website. So this is an example of what I did. So this was the event page for my Go Squad launch, and you can actually still see it. It's at claribelortega.com/Go Squad launch party. I included an embedded link to the scheduled YouTube event, which is right here. I made a fun custom thumbnail for it. The menu for the event was here, along with recipes, and I had a playlist for the book, a link to buy the book, and the book cover. So with a little imagination and heart, you can make a book event that's uniquely yours and that showcases the themes of your book and lets you have fun with your audience and make the most of your virtual events. Virtual events won't and shouldn't be going away once life goes back to normal or relative normalcy. We've learned throughout the pandemic that it is possible to hold many events virtually. And with that in mind, we should always keep all of our readers, especially those in the disabled community or who might not be able to afford to travel to events because of financial troubles, in mind. Even when we do have in-person events, we should be using things like mobile streaming on Instagram Live, TikTok, and YouTube to broadcast our events and reach the widest audience possible. I hope some of this was helpful to you all, and I wish you the best of luck in all your future events. And this is actually my social media, so if any of you want to buy my books or book me for one-on-one author consultations or coaching or publishing guidance, all my info is here, so you can find it, take a screenshot, write it down, do whatever you got to do.
Thank you, Claribel. That was amazing. I would like to book you now for 2022. Can I be first online? I think my favorite tip was the menu, because it's something that you do not think about in a virtual space. That kind of goes out the window.
Right.
Except, of course, it's such a bonding moment for everyone to be having the same snacks and being like, oh, where did you get your snacks? Did you make this? I love that. That is a genius idea.
Yeah, I really liked it.
It's so smart. Can you talk a little bit about how, and we have tons of questions, I'm going to try to get to all of them, but can you talk a little bit about how some of these same tips could translate to other kinds of visits, like if it's a school visit or a book club visit, or there are so many kinds of virtual visits that we're doing these days?
Yeah, so I would say that for those kinds of events, thinking outside the box is also really that's probably my favorite tip. Like, you don't have to do the thing that you think this event is supposed to look like, right? Like, when you think about an author event, when you think about a school visit, you think about you sitting there and talking to kids for 15 minutes, or you and someone else in conversation. But you can play games with the kids. You can stream The Sims and have them do storytelling and have them control the sim with you. Like, there's so many different things that you can do. What you have to do is find the things that you love and that you're good at and see how those can meet your storytelling, and then make them come together, right? Let's say your book is about baking and you love baking. Do a little live baking show with kids. Show them, set it up in your kitchen, have them ask questions as you're doing it. If there's a disaster while you do it, even better, they're gonna laugh. It makes it more fun. So I would definitely say, see how you can make it more fun for them. Think of, especially when you're with kids, think of one kid who's not going to pay attention, who's going to get bored, and focus on them. Focus on trying to make that kid pay attention to you and have fun during your author visit. I would say that, and then all of the tips about the equipment and the lighting and the visuals are all really important. You want to make sure that you're well lit and that you're not too dark, that people can hear you okay, that you have good internet connection if possible. I know that can be hard sometimes, but it can make a difference.
Yeah, those are, I mean, I think your point about the immersiveness and the interactive part of it is so engaging, whether you're going to a school or whether you do have a book club or whatever that is, people are looking for more than just the talking heads. I love that. Okay, so we have time for some questions.
Yay.
Yay. So my first question is from Lee. When you're doing, this is for book launches, when you're doing a bunch of virtual events for a book, how does one event not cannibalize another if everyone can attend from anywhere?
Right. So one of the things that I would suggest is don't overdo it in terms of how many events you are doing. So really sort of try to protect your time, first of all, because you should be resting, but also don't do too many events. And also, if you are thinking outside of the box and you're trying to make each event different, then it should be a new experience every time. You're going to be talking to somebody else, and it's not always going to be solely about your book. You should also talk about your co-panelist's book, and you can talk about different parts of the book. Like maybe you can explore one theme during one event and another theme in another. It shouldn't be sort of like a repetition of the same questions or sort of, conversations. You should seek to make each event as unique as you possibly can, especially if you're doing something like a book tour where it's like back to back. And sometimes that happens naturally because you do have different people, right? And different people have different conversation styles. But you as the author can also say, hey, I want to make sure that we're not sort of repeating the stuff. So here are some questions I've come up with, or can we do this really fun thing? Or can we do a lightning round or something? So just think of ways to like spice it up each time.
Yeah, that's great. I think moderators can always help, like you said, different panelists, but also or different authors, but also who you have as a moderator can really help with changing things up and just bringing a different vibe. We have a question from Renee about how long do you think a presentation should be, especially for elementary school kids? So that elementary and middle grade kind of age.
Yeah. So usually when I do elementary and middle grade, I do 30 minutes with them. Sometimes it's 15 minutes. It really depends on the class. I talk to the teacher, the librarian beforehand, and I'm like, what can your kids handle? Because each class is also different. Each class is going to need something different. So it's good for you to communicate with the educator and be like, what would be best for your kids? How can I best serve them? How can I best, get across to them? I don't want them to be bored. And sometimes kids want to do Q&A more than they want to hear you ramble on, or they want to ask you questions about their writing or how they can become, a writer in the future. So that's also good to ask a teacher, like, what do you want me to talk to the kids about, first of all? And how long do you think we should make each thing for? Because every class is going to be different.
That makes so much sense because they know their class best. And if you try to come in with ideas about what they're going to respond to, it might not be the case in that class, or it might be different from class to class. So great. Okay, so another question from Nadia says, I have partnered with 3 of my favorite indies and my local Barnes & Noble. What do you advise on swag for signed copies in location?
This also depends on sort of your audience. If you're doing like young adult, I know people love character cards. If you're doing like middle grade, elementary school, stuff like stickers that they can use with the characters is really great. Everybody pretty much loves bookmarks, I would say. I would say those are my 3 favorite. I also love pins. I am a big advocate of the button machine. I got one on Etsy, and it's such a great investment. So you make your own little pin buttons, and you can put like your book cover on it. You can put characters or something from your book on it. And when I have events, I give those out. So that could be another option too, which is pretty low cost. Like when you think about it, because you're going to be using it all the time.
Yeah, I'm super into buttons, and I don't even know why. I just really
everybody is.
I mean, right? But I didn't know I was a button person, and I'm definitely a button person. Okay, just a couple more questions before we have to go. We have a question from Hannah. I think it's Hannah. I hope I said that right. How do you think it's different with communications, getting questions from people virtually, like we're doing right now? And so you have to listen to me instead of these lovely people, rather than in person. Do you think the medium might change what questions people are comfortable asking? I think that's such a great question.
That is a great question. And I do think sometimes it will. I think sometimes people will be a little bit more comfortable asking things in a virtual setting, which can be a good or a bad thing sometimes, just depending. But for the most part, I've had lots of people ask really great questions on a virtual medium. I think it loosens most people up to be able to sort of like say like, hey, I want to do this, especially like aspiring writers, I feel are a lot more they ask questions more easily about like, how can I also do this during virtual visits.
That's great. All right, so now are you ready for us to take some of your advice? I'm going to do a lightning round with the last 3 questions. Are you ready?
All right, yeah.
Okay. What kind of lighting do you use to make your videos look so high quality? Because they do.
So there's 2 things that I do. I actually have a webcam that's separate from my computer. So for events like this, I use the Logitech C920, I believe it's called. And then I have a ring light, which is right over here. If it's during the day, I'm actually in front of a window as well. So that really lights me up. But I have the lights on, and then I have my ring light over here. And then I just hope for the best.
Can you, so do we all. What author would you love to do an event with? Like, right? That's a little putting you on the spot, I feel like, but.
So the author that I would have most liked to do an event with, I actually already did. So that's Lee Bardugo, and I almost thought I was literally breaking out in hives. So I would say probably
they have actually died and then just come back to life.
I've done events with both Lee Bardugo and R.L. Stine, which are like my ultimate heroes. So I'm good. But I would say next on my list is probably Holly Black, because I really love her. And the Curse Worker series is one of my favorites.
Amazing. So last question. I mean, we could literally be here all night, because I think people are like, wait, hold on.
I can do a couple more if you want. I'm fine.
Yeah. So, and somebody has also said, no question, they just want to sign you up for the next book launch. Like, when I get published, can you do my contact Claribel? All our details on our website. You can do that. So can you talk about a tech disaster that you had and how you solved that problem?
I'm trying to think. I think that there was one time where my computer wouldn't log into Zoom like right before an event that I was supposed to have, and I was scrambling. I think like last minute Zoom is like, I need to update. It was taking forever, but thankfully I have a desktop and a laptop, so I quickly switched everything over to my laptop. I was like sweating and so like flustered. But yeah, I was really glad to have 2 computers at that moment, because I just switched everything. And had I not done that, I probably would have just done it via my phone, which is not ideal. But I have Zoom everywhere just in case.
So plan B, C, D, all the way down the alphabet.
Yeah, you try to have backups and be quick on your feet. Yeah. I know somebody asked about setting up school visits, and I just really quickly wanted to say one tip is to make a dedicated page on your website for teachers and educators, where you have how they can book you for school visits. I have a lesson plan on mine, facts about me, because teachers love doing that when they're reading a book, facts about the author, graphics from the book. That's a really sort of like passive way that you can let educators know, hey, I'm available for school visits. And then also reach out to your publisher. A lot of times publishers have sort of, I know Scholastic has a portal for teachers and educators who are looking to book authors, and they'll put you on there with all of your information. So reach out to your publisher, talk to your agent about best ways you can do it, and definitely have a page on your website as well.
Awesome. All right. I lied when I said just 3 questions. This is actually the last question. Just keeping you on your toes. If you're doing a virtual school visit, would you suggest sending bookmarks or stickers to the class ahead of time?
You definitely can. I think that would make the kids really excited ahead of time. I know teachers do their best to like hype them up, but if they're getting something from the author, and if you send bookmarks and like sign them or something, they'll lose their mind. They'll just be so excited. They'll be more invested in it, and they'll and if you can do it and you can afford to do it comfortably, you never want to like break the bank or do something you can't afford for something that's not 100% necessary. Then I say go for it. You would really make those kids' day.
And to your point, I think anything that you can do to make the teacher or librarian's job easier, and like, you know, having that page that breaks out how you're available and in what ways that you're available for virtual or school visits, and giving them things to get the kids excited, that's a hard job anyway. So if you're making it easier for them, it just smooths everything over. And then your experience will be so great because they'll be like hyped, which is what you want in kids. You want them hyped for
Absolutely.
Claribel, this has been such a pleasure. I cannot tell you. We are so grateful that you have visited with us. And George has been furiously writing down all these notes to make sure he does his next virtual visit the right way.
I have the transcript. I can send everything to you.
We would love to. Thank you so much. George, any last
I can't
words?
wait to try Streamyard. Thank you.
Streamyard is amazing. It's my favorite. I really love Streamyard.
We used Streamyard for the Latinx Kidlit Book Festival, and we had so much fun playing with those little graphics and putting up those questions, and it was super fun. So yeah, all wonderful tips. Thank you so much. We are so grateful, and we will see you next time. And thanks again.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for having me. Have a good night.
Bye, Claribel. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.